What's up, y'all? Real quick, so the last video I made this, I know it's really but essentially because it's a sphere, we have a body here that connects here. So I haven't looked at the geology. This is not how I thought it was arranged, but I'm feeling like it's plausible because it fits the. So essentially every island is here. I took that island so to go to the here using the seamount shapes. This is a connection point, it appears, maybe related to there. So pretty much this side was here. From here, this point here, I think is what I put it as. Oh no, this point. So this one there. This one more where it is, pretty much where it is. This region's pretty close to adjacent to where it was. It just kind of widened, spread out there. So that's a good sign that we really are onto something. Where essentially this widened, this here was physically connected to the rest of this through here, which was also connected to that position over here of the big main island. It does fit because I did the orange test. I went to the kitchen, grabbed some things. I was like, I'm gonna grab an orange. Grabbed an orange. I walked back in and I was just thinking it would be really nice if I could map this in 3 dimensions. It sucks. Like it would be complicated. I was just sitting outside thinking, should I reach out to someone and be like, can you like map this for me? Even try to find out someone on Fiverr. Like, yo, could you just like take this chunk here, this chunk, these three, like use this, connect this through to here, along this, and then along this way, and then just bend it in. So here's one like equator, and then the prime meridian or whatever. Is that the right word? Although it's arbitrary, it's said to be arbitrary, it's actually at very close to what I interpreted in the past to be the previous like nucleus of the crust, which maybe it was the case. Although now I'm not so sure. Like it's hard to say anymore. Like it seems like everything's after the expansion took like a pretty much uniform surface, relatively speaking, and just reshaped it completely pretty much. Although we see, I was thinking Hawaii probably, like the seamount itself is probably very much like oceanic crust. So there are regions. What was I saying? Yeah. Where, I don't know. I don't forget exactly what I was saying now. But in short, like I'm thinking this right here, draw a line. Let's make it purple. Pretty much like there. Height, or whatever, or not height. No, this is what needs changed. Okay. Stroke purple. Okay, that needs to be lower than that. Okay, that's probably good. And then a second line, generally speaking, from here to here. A little more rounded. Maybe I can bow this out. Or just... I don't know what I just did. Let's remake this one. Maybe, like... Not from... Since... It seems to pass it, actually. So maybe it even... Let's just say, for the sake of making... I'm just trying to make it more, like, straight. And maybe perpendicular to the opposing one. Oh. There we go. So this is at a... let's go back to the line. This entire way to see the angle, 111. 111 degrees, 20 degrees. It's pretty much 90 degrees. And I mean, that's... Sure, I like moved it here, but like the bulk of this really is pretty much 90 degrees from here. So that is also a good sign. So essentially, like, we can take these four corners here and just like reconnect them opposite from this point. And yes, this is approximate. Like, there's probably like some adjustment for a C-mount here. But then, like, fold it in by wrapping it around, it like makes it significantly smaller. And I believe it makes... I mean, this thing's like straight up on the line. So maybe this is like the previous pole, like the Arctic, because it really has like a depression in the Arctic. And then like Antarctica maybe is more like this one then. Which makes sense because it is a continent. This is not. But then if this is like the North Pole, then that would mean this is more representative of, I guess, like Asia here, Europe over here, maybe. Africa maybe here. I don't know. That line, the current. So then the current is probably going more so pole to pole here. And building a mass adjacent to the pole. Maybe I don't want to say this is like Kursk magnetic anomaly. I don't want to compare it too much to Earth because that like it limits the process too much, where it may truly just be like Hawaiian planet Hawaii, and not like true like exactly resemble the Earth, although maybe have characteristics that are like similar enough. Like if this is the equator line like this, then it maybe would make sense as this here being like the Himalayas equivalent, and not like the island itself being like an uplift. Like I was really, I'm thinking all sorts of angles here. Admittedly, this line needs to go up too. Okay. And many of them, it's just like such a new concept for me to even think about. And obviously it could be false, so there's always that going on. And so like I'm certainly feeling the pressure of this, like videoing it, be like, oh, I'm kicking. Guys, you ain't even seeing my work, bruh. What, you ain't seen my work? You guys talking all this, but you ain't even heard about this? What the fuck is this dude saying about Hawaii? Like the most recent videos. Alright then, dude, let me check out what's up. Go to my shit. What in the fuck? I think this is pretty legit right here. These lines, like really representing the equator. This being because it was like an equator or some like balance point. Maybe not the equator, but some balance point that maybe was out of balance, and maybe that's part of why it like broke apart, because the kind of like a shallogram, like the energy is stable maybe more here, but as it continues to flow like out of balance, it then starts to physically cut into the surface of the sphere, the layer, which is actually the inner surface in this case, but cut into it enough to sever the parts, but specifically at a point that's maybe not exactly at the center point, but more like a shoulder height. So, I mean, it could be that let's look at this island again. From the angle that, like, this is like the Himalayas. I don't want to get too, like, absolute in that kind of angle of analysis. I think it would be only fitting if things were that connected, but also that they're different makes sense too. So, I was going for a home run with the. I still am gonna consider it. I just don't want to like make it so stringent in my analysis that people are dissuaded or off-put by it. Feel like it's too unreasonable. I feel like that should have rounded it. I don't know. Okay. So, in closing, I think this can be made a sphere. Okay. It is a little, maybe it's not even a sphere. Like, this is such an abrupt close. It's almost like this is where the Pacific Ocean opened. Wait. This can't be the Himalayas if this would be Asia. They're still so adjacent. I guess the whole thing is probably really only like actually about this kind of size. Like around here as a radius, as a sphere. Something like where at this point it's folding up and like standing up, and then this is connected over top, wrapping around and connecting back over here or over here from this side. Oops. Along here, all the way on this side. Connecting here. Or would it... is this only half? Am I like thinking it would connect here? When really it would like connect here, and then like this would connect here, like across. Doing this without mapping it. Oh my god, I thought I was like, okay, finally something a little more stable, but now I'm like, wait, shit. I guess it would still connect like across there, and maybe more so in other ways. Let's see, the rest of it. Yeah, the rest of it is just directly adjacent here. This side directly adjacent here. This side directly adjacent here. And then all the rest around here. But then I think this like generally sits more like here. And more like in a position where it's more involved with this, and like crossing this enough energetically somehow. I mean, it really is a bit of a stretch here. Like it almost has to be more like over here. So there may be like an issue in lengths, but I'm not like, it's just something of that nature is not so like completely dissuading that it necessarily is false. Let me just think about this. So if it's connected from here to here and here wraps around, that means that's connected here. That's connected here. And then this is connected here, like, or here, which is like over here, I guess. I'm trying to think. Like this way, I don't know. Okay, I think it might be okay. I think it's okay. I'm still thinking about it. Like, does every side abut another side and only one other side? That's really the like critical thing to be like, okay, we're onto something. If it's able to do that and match all of Hawaii and generally create a sphere, then like why would it do that? Like legitimately if it did that. That's all. If it did, then why would it? So this side is here, right here to here, here to here, and then this corner to here, down here, wrapping around this point, generally going to there, here to, so I drew it again, this point to here, and then generally around this point, this chakra segment here, which then comes to like a bend, like where it, like on a, even though it's flat here and flat here, generally speaking, on a surface more like here, maybe it has more like bends like this kind of thing going on. That's like here it bends upward abruptly kind of thing, and then runs along this side along here. So at this point it bends, like it has a fold that's crystalline and not just like a sphere. It's more of like a polygonal shape in 3 dimensions. Maybe something like this. That generally like curves towards a sphere, but maybe in its being smaller relative to Earth, like our perception of it is more abrupt bends in the way it would like manifest, where it's more like here's a block, and then a fold between them with then a triangular thing, large triangle at the base that wraps around, connects to this thing. That's just this elongated pole segment. Okay, let's go. Keep going though. So this connects here. So we're so far this whole thing to this whole thing to here, then begins around here. So we still are fully giving connection points to every location along the way. Then this one being just repeated 4 points, kind of like a Einstein's cross. Einstein cross. It's an Einstein cross. Practically. Oops. So many tabs, I know, guys. I just want to bring it up so it's there. Kind of like this, but where it's the same image, but just bent. So, like, because I'm putting it in 2 dimensions, when it's actually in a sphere, and so it's the same point at all these points. Okay, so let's keep going. This whole side then is like, we'll just mark off this side as like green. So from here, hopefully I can just draw on everything. Let's go to the top one. Draw on top layer. Here to here, this whole length is this segment. And over here to here. And then we have Kaula. Okay. And then, because this obviously doesn't immediately connect here, let's go back here and go the other way. So this whole segment abuts the next portion of this. So let's just finish this block. So now this is like fully done and shouldn't be adjacent to anything else. So that's a good sign that it shouldn't be adjacent to anything else. Okay. Okay, so then for sure then let's use this one here. This length is this one's a full image, so let's just use it. Is here, and then this length is here, and then this length it's maybe a little longer than it seems, so it might be a little anomalous and in need of adjustment, although that might be because of that seamount there, that the landslide in this region that I'm probably not quite accounting for in spacing it here. Certainly not. I'm sure spacing is in need of fine tuning to ensure this is the case. And then we are done with we've fully done this. Every segment is fully part of a single landmass that's fully conjoined, adjacent to only one other part. At no points missing something, it's all continuous. Thus, I would say this is probably how Hawaii formed in exactly this arrangement, in a spherish, polygonal, three-dimensional, whatever the word is, type of shape. Polyhedron. Is that the word? That must be the word. Polyhedron. Many plane faces. Polyhedron. Polyhedron. Okay then. So this point just sits here, and this point converges in a sphere. And we've got ourselves something that now is going to need some really close inspection in terms of geology on my part going forward, and hopefully people looking at this, once I maybe get it a little more not looking like this. This is because it's a mess. It's a mess. I know it would be so nice to look more like this. Just have the islands adjacent as they are on this sphere, and be like, dudes, how is that possible? I'm just using the data. I know I rearranged it over and over again, but that's what happened when I quit my job. 2014. I was like, let's go to cosmological redshift. Okay, just redshift, sure, why not? So there's different types of redshift, one of which is Doppler shift, where there's motion away. Another known cause is gravitational redshift, although it's tied to general relativity and not classical mechanics. I would argue, if you will, that that doesn't matter. It's still it's still a thing that occurs. It doesn't matter if it wasn't previously incorporated into classical mechanics. That doesn't mean it can't be. Okay, and then there's so-called expansion of space redshift, cosmological redshift. So I was like, this is kind of this thing only comes about because of what's known as Hubble's law, where all distant redshifted galaxies follow a trend where the redshift is increasing per distance that becomes correlated. And I was like, it's not philosophical to add expansion of space. Good. 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 Okay. And I was like, well, there's two known mechanisms. The one that we've really investigated is Doppler shift, because that led to expansion of space. It's basically the same thing, but with some caveats. Well, it's not because of, but it's actually what's happening is when really it's the same thing, just repackaged and rebranded and with a pretty bow tie on it. Shit, man, really? Well, okay, well, keep going anyway, because that's me, huh? People are like, what the fuck is he talking about? I'm in my head. Some people know. Don't notice things that you might notice. Anyway, or do. It's fine. Understand. Just observe. Do you. Pardon me for telling you what to do there. I know that's kind of what I'm doing. It's running themes, so. Okay, so anyway, back to the point. Back to what I was saying before I get too distracted on trying to redshift. I felt was probably more likely to be caused by gravity, because then it doesn't need new things. It's oh, it's just caused by gravity. We just didn't figure out how. So I was like, well, this thing where galaxies are the end of the line seems kind of, in terms of systems where there's orbitals of this system that has things going around it, kind of thing. We see it in solar systems, we see it in galaxies, we see it in atoms, really. We see it across enough of a spectrum where it's shouldn't that be over there? Oh, Lord. Oh, the irony of it all, huh? You guys are oh, he won't stop, huh? So, in case anyone is truly interested in what I have to say, I will speak, unless, here we go. So in essence, I was like, well, what if something's bigger than a galaxy? Is so big that it's hugely massive, and things just orbit around it. And galaxies orbit around it, and a galaxy of galaxies. Maybe that object could influence the light as it travels. And I just thought about it for a decade in passing, maybe even more, since my first exposure to the Big Bang and its line of reasoning, where I was that doesn't, not really reasonable. Same, I guess. Okay, fair enough. Um, and so I just thought about it. I was like, well, maybe it orbits the, maybe the Milky Way is orbiting something. Somewhere up the line, there's a big enough, a massive enough object where its gravity can uniformly affect all observations. Maybe. Oh Lord. Sorry, I'm in my head. Like me, huh? Gravity Steve here at your service. Recently named that video Uncoiled. A little throwback there. Okay, pardon me. So, I just thought about it over time, and then one day I was like, to get back to what I was talking about, one day I was like, I never considered that not only is it gravitationally redshifting the light because it couldn't produce all distant redshifted galaxies because it doesn't matter which direction we look in, we still see this correlated effect. So it's like kind of anomalous to the point where we were like we're like, all right, then I guess this expansion of the universe is happening. Expansion of space is real, and like incorporated it. And so then it became like a thing. Uh, but it wasn't philosophical. Okay, good. Glad we're getting somewhere. Okay. And so then I realized that I never considered gravitational lensing. And that's when I quit my job. And I didn't know how all distant redshifted galaxies could be caused by gravity. But I quit my job anyway because I knew it made sense enough that I began the process of like reasoning through it. In the beginning of the process really was not coming together that like cohesively, where it wasn't at all. It was like essentially it was like a center object and like some object. Let's start a new one. New. I'll just draw on something. Some object is just like sitting here. La la la. Here's Earth, like tiny. Milky Way. Maybe that's the Milky Way, and within there is the solar system, and then within there is the Earth. And here's this big, massive object that there's a bunch of galaxies around on all directions, in front of and behind it. And the light from all these galaxies, in order for us to see it, has to travel. Or maybe I should use red. It has to travel away from this object. Away from this object to reach Earth. So it produces a degree of blue shift, but over here it travels towards it in a way. So there would be basically not a uniform like effect, but of like redshift per distance, and it's not exactly uniform. And the essentially like this is beyond a certain distance. So like at short distances, like right here, it doesn't, the cosmological redshift is not like observed. So only at a sufficient distance. And my thought is like, okay, not only is like the light coming from all these galaxies going to Earth and being influenced by the gravity of this object to be either redshifted or blue shifted. But it's also bending, and when I had that thought, I was like, how's it bending? Well, maybe it bends, like if it bends around, like it can have like a circular kind of bend. But like the odds of the Earth being hit by light that's just all of it traveling in a circle is very low. Like it makes no sense really. Like what are the odds that like it has to, like that doesn't make sense. So then I was like, okay, let's think about this. If the light's traveling by it and it's bent like just like this kind of thing, like it just kind of keeps going and it effectively doesn't matter that much. Just making me think of how currents flow in magma and seem to produce like a node. Like this would be like a volcano in Hawaii. That like the currents flowing along a boundary that was forming caused like a node at it, but that's besides the point. The light around that object though bends, which maybe that's why the currents do that anyway. Oh, maybe. And so like the degree of bending comes into play. So basically initially I had I started picturing there's all sorts of things kind of like this kind of shape that I don't know why I'm just drawing this. I can't remember what it was and if this made like sense in terms of the gravity of it. It's just something of that nature that wasn't actually at all the final product. It wasn't until I thought, well, what if it like bends it like back to it like this, but then like it's so dense and massive that it physically propagates through it and doesn't like the light from the, so here's a galaxy sitting here, and its light is emitted in all directions, but like in order to get to Earth, it doesn't actually travel like straight to Earth. Like say this is Earth here. It actually travels in this instance when it's like beyond that object and this object is overwhelmingly influencing it, it physically travels through the object and then just out of the object, and then the object bends it back towards it, but not a not a crap. Cool. But not immediately, so it kind of like wraps around. And then it can arrive at Earth, so let's say it arrives at Earth. Then we begin to see a trend of cosmological redshift per distance. But like it doesn't necessarily hit Earth, and it doesn't necessarily like exactly go nearby Earth. Like if Earth were to be there, like I'm just for the sake of us like it arriving at Earth, it's there. Like this could still be Earth, and it could potentially do like this and come back this way. I mean, it would essentially, and but it, like in order to get to Earth, potentially do something like this, and just essentially travel along a flow path that's a figure eight. And when that like clicked, then I realized like not only did the cosmological redshift get explained by gravity, but so did magnetic fields. And I was like done. Like that's when I knew it was like what? So like, from the beginning, that was like the first thing that occurred in the process. I mean, sure, it's been evolving in the same way, but I feel like that's what just happened with Hawaii, where it really began, and I recorded the process, whereas I didn't record it when this was happening. I wasn't like recording video of me doing anything. I was just writing a paper, pretty much sitting there reaching out to people by email, just like beginning to realize what was even happening. And even then, even now, not really knowing. I mean, certainly. And this type of thing probably is happening. I'm just thinking of like and then like rings. So maybe there are like there's certain like distances, stable distances outward and inward, where certain like wavelengths of light stably travel in a circle, like a circular orbit, without being like pulled in so as to become part of like a overwhelmed orbit. So with that said, before I go into that too much and just start talking, just start talking about it. I don't even know why or what I'm saying or what I'm getting at, but just saying things. Before that starts happening too much, I think that's like legitimately like I look forward to looking into how plausible this is from a geological standpoint and other things like currents, because I really am not like the where this current is not where I thought it was, but I was really separating the islands to the point where I totally separated them, which probably once I saw this shock right here, I was like, wait a minute. All right, I went too far with this separating the islands, kind of like how we do. Like separate. We separated science and philosophy like I separated these islands. It was just too far when really they were always together and I just was mistaken. But like the current, like, is that how the current? I'm not sure if these though, like, still might have accreted ultimately, but like the underlying material was the sphere, and over time it began to accrete more like dense land masses ultimately, kind of thing. That in those instances here were maybe tied to currents, because I mean, how did I draw this? I drew this current in here, yeah. This one in here, which then has currents coming off this side, which do go into here. Okay, so it's highly possible that the same thing can be done where it's like, okay, starting from some sort of like mantle puncture hole and currents then flowing through this body. She's probably the mantle puncture hole in that instance is essentially the mantle being the outer shell of the sphere, to have it allow like being cool enough where it's a shell, but then like mantle around it punctures it and goes in, and then like the current from the pressure just like overwhelms inward and causes it to flow into the already pre-existing more like uniform base and shape, like the end resultant terrain based on the currents that flow, using just basically a starting point maybe here that then it spreads out in all directions from, and then it ends up producing a mound over here. So this is kind of like here maybe, whereas Mount Mauna Kea is like Mount Gurnar. I might be mistaken on that. I just maybe want it to be in my head. It's gotta be. It's gotta be. They're just too significant. It's those. It's them. It's them. All right. Yeah. Till next time. Peace out.